Hi, I'm just wondering whether you can actually let me do a bit of ranting. Okay, let me tell you a bit of history about myself. I spent, I think, in the year 2015 to 2017 doing a lot of deliverance. I prayed for people who were sick. I prayed for people who are demon possessed. I prayed for even people who speak in different voices and have tremendous strength. So people call these people demonized. And there was one day, there's high floor. There's one day I had a very strange experience. I was called to minister to a girl. And apparently what has happened was that she has been ministered to many pastors that had been praying for her, trying to exorcise a demonic being inside her. And what happened was that they were unsuccessful, so the mother brought the daughter to me for me to pray over her. And what happened was that I did some interviews, and I found out that the daughter had been arguing with the father. And what happened was that the father wanted to work overseas, and she didn't like it. And also the father wanted to change churches, and she didn't like it as well. So what happened was that she was brought to the office, and I prayed over her. And when I called out the name of the spirit replied and said that the name of the spirit was Satan. And I started giggling. The reason for it is because at that time, I had the impression that although Satan didn't exist to me, which is the topic of today, I at that time actually believed that there is only one Satan, one Lucifer. And what happened was that I started laughing because who is she that Lucifer possessed her? And then I suddenly began to realize that she wasn't possessed by a demonic spirit. But it said she couldn't cope with this idea that she couldn't handle a relationship breakup with dad. And she invented a split personality within her. And that split personality took on the form of an entity called Satan, but it's actually her. You get what I mean? The reason for this is because she attends a Pentecostal church that speaks about spiritual warfare day in, day out, day in, day out. So much so that the personality she took on, she named Satan. Now that set me thinking, and that set me actually questioning myself. How many times have I cast out really a demonic spirit? So what I did was that I went on this journey and asked God, what is this all about? And I came across a passage of scripture that speaks about Lucifer that's actually in Isaiah chapter 14. When it says that, "O morning star, how hast thou fallen?" And the word Lucifer only comes in the King James Version. And you see that if you read on further, it says, "Is this not the man whom the world feared?" And then you begin to realize that Lucifer is actually not a demonic spirit, but a man. And then when you read verse 4 in its context, it says that Lucifer is actually the king of Babylon. And in scripture, the king of Babylon is none other than King Nebuchadnezzar, who went mad by refusing to acknowledge God. You can read about this in Daniel 4. And so Isaiah 14 is not about some demonic cherub that fell down from heaven and started destroying the whole earth, but rather it's actually speaking about King Nebuchadnezzar. King Nebuchadnezzar. It's a poetic form of expressing how this mighty king eventually will fall to the knees of God and became like a madman. And people begin to laugh at him. And Isaiah 14 was about how we should be laughing at him. King Nebuchadnezzar, not Satan. So I begin to realize that as I read the scriptures, the word Satan is actually manifested in different forms and in different ways. The first time it's mentioned by name is in the book of Job, and it says, Hashatan appears. Now, if you understand Hebrew, it simply means the Satan. And you begin to realize the book of Job is actually a play. Although it's based on fact, but it's nevertheless written like a play. Somebody has this part to say, somebody has this part to say, and somebody has this part to say. And as they read the book of Job, you begin to realize one party will read this, one party will read this, and one party will read this. And you begin also to understand there was a need to be, for a protagonist to be in the story. And it so happened that the protagonist is called the protagonist. And that's the exact meaning of the word ha-shatan. The protagonist, the opposer, the enemy, the opposing side, the opposing side. And then you read Satan appearing again in the census of David. And you realize that the scripture says Satan actually asked David to take a census. But when you read the actual fact of the account of the story, it is the people of Israel that asked David to take a census. But the people of Israel were standing in opposition with David. Hence the word Shatan, the opposer. Now, does it mean that he's a demonic spirit? The answer is no. So come, and when you read about the account in Peter's story about how Jesus told Peter, get thee behind me, Satan. And we think that Satan actually possessed Peter. He didn't. What he just meant was that Satan was opposing his plans. Peter was opposing his plans. As such, he became a shaitan towards Jesus. He became an opposer towards Jesus because Jesus told him, you know not the plans of God, but you only know the plans of man. And that was what Peter had in mind. His ideas, his religious career. Now then you come to the part where Jesus was dealing with this entity in the desert. And many people say that there Satan appeared to him in the desert and took him to the top of the temple and then took him to the top of a mountain. Guys, be serious. You seriously think that a man who has fasted for 40 years can actually walk all the way to Jerusalem, which is probably about 6 hours drive, 3 days walk, and then climb upon Mount Jerusalem? It is crazy to actually think like that. A simpler explanation would be this. He was having an internal struggle in his mind. And you look at the 3 temptations. Number 1, turn stones into bread. Turn the law into grace. Second one, took him to the top of the temple, which was where the law was practiced, and asked him to jump down. And took him to the mountain, which is the point where he showed him the whole wide world, which was actually Mount Jerusalem. It was Jesus' struggle against the law, internally in his mind and in his spirit. Whether he would come under the old covenant as a Jew, or whether he would come under the new covenant, under grace. So in other words, what happened was the Satan who actually tempted him was the old covenant, his internal struggles. Then you have Satan, which is in the book of Romans, where it says the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. And that you can clearly see is talking about either Nero or either the high priest who was trying to bring people under the law. In an earlier video, I've done what was Revelation 20. You can refer to it in my Facebook post. But in short, as before my battery runs dry, I want you to realize Satan is different things to different people. Because Satan is not a person. He is a personality. He is a creature of language. In other words, what happens is that it is a necessity, in a sense, to paint a protagonist in a story. So what happens is that the word Satan does not mean that he is a demonic creature. He is not. I'll give you another example, and I think my good friend Jonathan, I can't remember his full name because it's already 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm very tired. And he wrote a brilliant article by telling you what it means to be Satan appearing as an angel of light. That Satan there is the high priest, minister of righteousness, minister of the law, appears to have a form of righteousness. So you begin to realize that when Jesus called the Pharisees being the children of the serpent, it's basically about the Old Covenant. And the Old Covenant was the very thing that stopped people from entering into the New Covenant in which Jesus was trying to bring people to. Because Jesus knew when the Old Covenant ended, Jerusalem would end and people would die. And so what happened was that to Jesus, Satan was the Old Covenant. It was the law. It was the priesthood under the Old Covenant. It was the temple under the Old Covenant. It was Jerusalem under the Old Covenant. Hence, when you read Revelation 20, you begin to realize Satan was destroyed in the lake of fire because it was the ending of the Old Covenant. So, I know people will get very upset with this video, as they always will be, because when their religious doctrines and anchors are being challenged, they get upset. More importantly, I don't really care whether you're upset. I care whether you're set free. And I think this is something which is crucial. And I think this is something which is important in Christendom, because what we want is spirituality and not superstition. Spirituality is achieved by knowing the truth. Superstition is achieved by believing what you think is the truth. There is a difference. Spirituality sets us free to be humans. Superstition makes us think that we are superior to other people and other races and other religions. It is a form of narcissism, only disguised in the name of Christ. That, my dear friend, is evil. And that, my dear friend, is modern day Satanism. To think that just because you believe in a set of creed where other people don't, and you're superior to others. The Bible is meant to reveal the heart of the Father, not the hatred of the Pharisees. With that, I close. And I pray that you may have light to realize that the gospel is about coming into the new covenant. And when the Bible speaks about darkness, it's not talking about evil, but rather it's talking about people who are in darkness. And the reference to darkness is Mount Sinai, which was where the law was given. Light, Christ. Darkness, the law. God bless you.